that sometimes this whole screen sharing thing is crazy. During the pandemic, many of us have had to learn how to do things that we didn't used to know how to do. But I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for coming to Working Well You and participating in this program. We have had a great series. In fact, there's one more next week. That'll be the last one. So we hope to see some of you there. But I wanted to introduce Mary Barley to you all. Mary Barley is somebody that I've known for a really, really long time, and she's been involved in fitness and wellness and well-being for at least 30 years. I don't think I've known her the whole time, but most of that time I have. And for the last 9 years, I can't believe it's been 9 years, she's been the well-being coordinator for Leon County, where some of you are from the county, and you know that's over 1,700 employees, and she's done a phenomenal job with that program. She's also the part-time executive director for Working Well. It's pretty on this program. She's a one of the founding members of getting this whole thing started, and she's been a mentor to me and so many other people, and she's just got a great deal of knowledge and passion for this community, and we're so lucky to have Working Well and have Mary Barley be a part of it. As far as her presentation today, HeartMath, I've recently got really involved in HeartMath. I love HeartMath. If you're not familiar with it, you're going to enjoy this program. It's going to tap into some things that are really going to help you. And Mary has been certified to teach this program for organizations. And she's been working with the employees in Leon County. If you guys are interested in bringing this to your organization, just contact Working Well and we'll see what we can do. And also Mary has presented on this statewide level some information about HeartMath, at least it's statewide. I think, Mary, you can elaborate on that. But without further ado, Mary Barley, I hope you've taken your nice breathing into your heart-focused breathing for this presentation and got yourself ready for it. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself.
Well, I tried, but it all went out the window when we had all of this stuff going on. But all of y'all know by now, you can be assured if I'm having anything to do with technology at all, that there's going to be issues. And thank you, Mary, for helping me. And thank God Paula came in here and figured it out. I just got a laptop in here, and that's where everything was going. But anyway, yes. So now I'm like totally in coherence. So trying to present this, and may be a little bit challenging for me. I also have not taught this in about 1.5 years because of COVID and everything else. So, you know, I practice, but it just may not all come out as smooth as it should. But I will tell you that there's a lot of science involved here, and we don't have a lot of time to get in depth. When I teach this class to the county, it's a 5 to 6 weeks class normally. So I tried to get the slides that would have to do with the highlights of it, so you would get the overall idea of it. And then I think most of the people on here are from the county. I can't see everybody, I don't think, but most everybody I'm seeing is from the county. And I am going to teach this starting in June. So if you want to come back, if you haven't had it and you want to come back and get the full, then you can. But today, again, you may have some questions about, you know, some of the things I'm saying. If I go over them really quickly, just know that you can call me, or you can jump back into the class in June and see the whole thing. But anyway, HeartMath, for those of you that may not know anything about it, has been around for almost 30 years now. They were created to study stress. That's what they do. Is they've been, when they started seeing how much stress was affecting people's health and performance and relationships, you know, for people that were stressed out all the time, they started studying it, and they brought in all sorts of scientists from every different kind of science that you can imagine, and learned and put together this whole system. And it's more than just a breathing system. They give you this background, this science, and then they give you tools to use. So it all comes together. And these are all the different areas that HeartMath works with. They've got specializations. It's the same material, but they work with all these different areas. And they've done a tremendous amount of work in the last few years with first responders. So the fire, the police, the corrections, and especially the military, because of all of the depression and suicide and post-traumatic stress that's happening in those areas. They've had a lot of really good success with it. They've also got lots and lots of published research. When this was printed back in 2014, they had well over 100 published research articles, and these are some of the different magazines that they've been in. They've done a lot of the research themselves. Several colleges have done research. They've done research in conjunction with other entities, so they're very valid. And so what we're going to talk about today is the way they found to best self-regulate stress. That's kind of another word for manage. People have gotten away from that word manage because managing stress really is something you don't do very well, but you do find ways to self-regulate. And so what they've learned over all these years is that being able to be resilient is the best way that you can self-regulate your stress. So are most of all of y'all able to unmute and participate? And if not, I guess we have the chat, right, Mary? If you want to put any answers in the chat box, Mary can tell me what's in there if y'all don't want to unmute.
Yeah, if you guys have a question, just type it in the chat box. I'll see it pop up. And then at the end, I don't know, Mary, do you want me to interrupt you or you want to wait till the end?
Well, like right now, I just would like to know what resilience means to if somebody wants to answer what resilience means to you. That would be great. Anybody got an answer? No?
I can say something. Oh, wait, someone wrote the ability to bounce back and keep moving. That's from Jana Richardson. The ability to bounce back and keep moving. Thank you.
Yes, and that's really what most people are going to say, and that is exactly what resilience is. But HeartMath expanded on this several years ago, and actually I think most all people that deal in resilience now have the same definition for it. I know the military has totally accepted this definition. This is the one they use, but it's actually having the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. And I think this is best demonstrated by seeing what the county and the city have had to do around hurricanes. As you know, several years ago, we had some major hurricanes and there were some terrible disasters, not necessarily here. You think about New Orleans a lot, but I know that there were times here when we had issues when we weren't as prepared as we have become now. I know one time utilities, nobody had electricity, and it took like 10 days to kind of get it, and it was just a really big deal. But now when we talk, when we have totally changed how we prepare for hurricanes. So we do prepare ahead of time, with the county, we do the build the bucket thing. We all now have to go work at the EOC if we get called or someplace, for hurricanes. We have to be trained ahead of time to do that. So there's a tremendous amount of preparation for any kind of disaster really that happens, but particularly for hurricanes. And then we recover from them. We've learned a lot about how to make that recovery process go a lot smoother, and even in terms of dealing with FEMA and all that kind of stuff. And then, we've used what we've learned to go back and take those lessons learned, do a better job next time, be more prepared. So it's about building this capacity to be able to be resilient. And emotionally, what we're talking about is trying to learn to build our resilience so that we can sustain our energy. Because we think a lot about energy like a battery. We wake up in the morning and we have so much of it. And if we, go all day, we get home at night and we have no energy left, and where our battery is no longer charged. And so what we need to do is find tools to help us, bounce back from stressful situations and use that resiliency so that by the end of the day, we have energy, and that during the day, we're functioning at a much higher level. So basically, we're all energy systems, y'all. We expand and renew energy all day long. And when you think about just from a physical point of view, we eat to have energy, we hydrate to have energy, we sleep, we nap sometimes, we stop and take a break sometimes. Like yesterday, I was feeling tired. I went outside and walked for 10 minutes. So we know that all during the day, there are different ways physically that we need to renew our energy. But what we don't know a lot of times is how to renew our emotional energy. And that's what leaves us the most drained at the end of the day. So we have resiliency in different domains. You know, we learned a long time ago, we're not just a physical being, but we consist of the mind, body, and spirit. They all overlap each other a lot. And in each of these areas, we have a resiliency. So in the physical domain, we have physical flexibility, we have aerobic endurance, we have strength that helps us be resilient. In the mental domain, we have the ability to have mental flexibility, to have a long or short attention span. Our ability to focus and incorporate multiple points of view gives us resiliency in that area. Spiritually, and this is not religious, but this is spiritual. So one of the biggest, I think, is a commitment to our values. We all have a core set of values, and a lot of times when we stray from those or when we feel the most stress, being tolerant of other people's values and beliefs. And we see what's happened in our country, you know, when we're not tolerant of other people's values and beliefs. And in the emotional domain, we need emotional flexibility to be resilient. We need to have a positive outlook. You know, research has confirmed that people who are more optimistic than pessimistic live longer, have a higher quality of life. And then this ability to self-regulate our emotions. And it's in the emotional domain that we absolutely lose the most energy. So I would ask you, which situation is going to make you more exhausted at the end of the day? To have a day where you had a lot of physical activity, so you were gardening, working in the yard all day, or maybe you took a day like Mary does sometimes and go out and kayak and just be really physical outdoors, or if you just had an extremely stressful day at the end of the day, which would drain you most, the stress or the physical exertion? And I think most of us would say stress. We also know that each of these domains affects the other ones. So let's talk about how the physical domain might affect these other areas. So let's say that you didn't sleep at all last night, or you woke up and you felt really, really bad, but you went to work anyway. Do you think that being exhausted physically might keep you from being able to focus mentally or to incorporate other people's points of view? You might feel that way. It's that day, it's my way or the highway, and you don't really care what anybody else thinks. From a spiritual perspective, you may not have a lot of tolerance for people that day. And from an emotional perspective, you're probably going to snap a lot quicker. If you're kind of down, you're going to be sad a lot more. If you've got a little bit of anger in you, you know that's going to be triggered, and you may scream or yell at somebody a lot quicker than you would on a day when you're totally rested. So each one of these domains, whenever we're feeling drained, I had that turned off. I apologize. Anyway, you can see in the middle, you're going to see that word coherence. And coherence is something we're going to learn more about. And that's one of the ways that we're able to maintain resiliency in those areas. But just know that all of the areas of your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual body interact with each other. We have resiliency in each of those areas. And when we're drained in one, it's going to affect the others too. So what we do know is that emotions drive our physiology. And this is a perfect example. This is from one of the studies that HeartMath did. And this is a graph. The man is hooked up to a monitor that's measuring his heart rate. And as we all know, the heart rate is how many times a minute your heart beats. And for most of us, the average heart rate is 72. For the average person, if you're an elite athlete, it could be as low as 40. If you're really out of shape, it may stay around 100. And the whole idea is that the less times your heart has to beat a minute, the slower it's going to be wearing out. If it beats really fast, it's like tires in a car. You put a lot of mileage on them, they're going to have to be replaced a lot sooner. They're going to get a lot more wear and tear on them. So your heart's kind of the same way. So when our heart rate's beating at a really, really high rate often, which it does when you're stressed, that drains a lot of energy from us. It also can affect the health of your heart. So in this scenario, the husband and the wife are in the car. That's kind of a confined little area, when you get in the car and you're starting to get into an argument, if you're lecturing your kids, there's no place to go. And then you're buckled in a seatbelt on top of that, so you feel even more confined. But anyway, they're driving down the road. The husband's heart rate is right around what's normal, going between about 80 and 50 beats a minute. All of a sudden, the wife says something that gets under his skin, which could happen easily since we usually know how to push our significant other's buttons. And his heart rate starts going up as she's starting to antagonize him or upset him or whatever's happening here. So now, just in the initial time of starting this argument, his heart rate's now going up above 100 beats a minute. For 15 minutes, they argue, and you see his heart rate is up there close to 140 for almost 15 minutes. Now, for those of you that know anything about exercise, you know that you have a maximum heart rate, and then you try to exercise between about 70 to 85% of that. Well, for a 50-year-old, right around this is 85% of the maximum heart rate. So if this was a 50-year-old man, it would be like he was exercising at 85% of his maximum heart rate for 15 minutes here. That's a lot to go at, to go at that high level, a long time. So they finally stop arguing, but he, as most of us, when we've been upset, we just don't immediately go from upset to calm. So what happens now for the next 25 minutes, his heart rate stays elevated above 100, even though they're not arguing anymore. So you can see that the emotions, what they did to his body physically, how they drove his heart rate up, how they kept his heart rate up really high during the argument, and then how it stayed high. And they know that for a lot of people, especially first responders, this heart rate doesn't get back down to a normal rate sometimes for an entire shift for like 8 hours. So there's a lot of wear and tear on the physiology. It definitely affects your performance. It affects your health. It affects your ability to relate well and harmoniously with other people. So what we know is that constant expending energy without having rest and recovery is going to lead to burnouts and health challenges and diminished performance. And I think, one of the places that we see this is a lot of times when we get a new project or something new's happening, maybe it's a marriage or a new home or whatever, you're excited. And so you go in with this really positive attitude and you're performing at a really high level for a period of time. And then it drags on and on and on and on. And I've seen this with renovations with people in their houses. They're so excited, but as the time goes on, it takes forever, and their house is torn apart. They start really getting frustrated, really getting aggravated, short fuse, short temper. And in this case, you're probably not going to go to burnout. But let's say they talk about this a lot with the military, that when guys go into the military, a lot of times that's a calling. They feel a lot of purpose for that. They're very, very excited about it, especially when they get deployed. They go overseas, they do really well for a while. And then just that constant daily stress that they live with begins to burn them out. And if they don't have a way, they don't have tools to recover, that's when they get into the deep depression and eventually may commit suicide or have PTSD. So we have to find a way to renew that energy and do it on a regular basis throughout the day. One of the things that I learned in HeartMath that really blew my mind was that for every 5 minutes of stress that we feel, it depresses your immune system for the next 5 hours. So if you don't find a way to recover, you can have at least 5 5-minute times during the day where you feel a lot of stress. And if you're not finding a way to become resilient and bounce back from that, then the whole day has gone by and your immune system's depressed. And then you get up the next day and the same thing happens and your immune system's depressed. So it's really important to understand, to start self-regulating, to pay attention to the emotions you're feeling, and to find a way to bounce back from the negativity that's going around them. So basically, we have our emotions, they only do 2 things. We talk about good and bad emotions. We talk about negative and positive emotions. But the truth of the matter is, all humans have a huge range of emotions. And most of the time, we're going to experience all of those emotions many, many times during our lives. So one of the things I love about mindfulness, is that they teach you to identify what it is you're thinking, but to not judge it, just to recognize it and kind of let it go. And so, again, the emotions aren't good or bad, but they do one or two things to you and your physiology. They either deplete you or they renew you. So what we know is that depleting emotions such as fear, frustration, impatience, anger, there's so many of them, and you know that they create a very toxic feeling within you. You know what it feels like to be angry. It feels terrible. It feels like your whole body's tensed up. It just drains you whenever you're really angry. But what happens during that time is there are about 1,400 hormones and biochemicals that are dumped into your system whenever you're experiencing depleting emotions. And the biggest one is cortisol, which we've all heard about. Cortisol can be good in small doses, but when you have a lot of cortisol in your system, it stays in your system for up to 12 hours. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people don't sleep at night, because of the stress hormones going through their body. And I was reading yesterday an article on sleep, and it was talking about sleep disturbances, things that wake you up in the night. And one of them is cortisol and what's going on with your sympathetic nervous system. I didn't know that it could actually wake you up, but I guess that's why people wake up in the middle of the night stressed out. It also does a lot of damage to us physiologically. So it reduces your muscle mass, and of course that takes your strength away. And also, muscle is where mitochondria is held. Mitochondria helps you burn fat, so it's going to slow down your metabolism. You read that a lot about people that don't sleep gain weight. It kills your brain cells. It impairs your memory. I think we all have known people that have gone through really stressful situations would agree that it has a tendency to age you really quickly. It keeps you from being able to think clearly, to being creative, from problem solving, from having a coherent conversation. And your performance overall is generally diminished. So a lot of negativity with depleting emotions. Okay, the opposite of that is renewing emotions. And so emotions and attitudes like care and courage and tolerance, and particularly gratefulness and appreciation, also create about 1,400 hormones and biochemicals that are dumped into your system. But these actually regenerate you, and they offset that energy drain that you're feeling. So these are some of the positive things that happens when we experience renewing emotions. It actually makes us live longer. And I think I remember some of the statistics, and one of them was like about 15 years longer without chronic disease a lot of times. So it really does increase your lifespan to be able to, to regulate your emotions. It increases your resiliency to adversity. You bounce back a lot quicker from adverse situations. It improves your memory, greatly enhances your problem solving and creativity. One of the parts of this class that I love so much is about intuition, or that deep wisdom that we all have, and being able to access it. And we can do that easier when we're experiencing renewing emotions. It's kind of like going to your heart. What's your heart telling you? What's your gut telling you? What you know is really best for you, as opposed to making decisions from the head and the ego. And it definitely improves your job performance and your things you're able to achieve in life. So what we have to do is to learn to manage our energy in an intelligent way. So if we want to create resilience, if we want to operate at our maximum capacity, if we want to be fulfilled and happy and we want good health, then they're all grounded in the intelligent management of energy expenditures and then our ability to renew energy daily. So you can't wait till the end of the week when you've had a really stressful week and say, when the weekend comes, I'm gonna go take a hike, I'm gonna go to the beach, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna lay around, I'm gonna watch Netflix all weekend. You have to do this on a daily basis. And remember, 5 minutes, 5 hours. And the most important first step in being able to do this is to be able to identify what's causing us to drain, what's causing our energy to drain, what's causing unnecessary energy expenditures. And of course, we all know that the big ones will create a lot of energy drain. So if you're diagnosed with cancer, if you're all of a sudden hit with a divorce, if someone you love dies, if you lose your job, those are all really big things. But the day-to-day small things that just kind of operate in the back of our mind all the time can be just as draining. So I know I had an aunt that was the biggest worrywart in the whole world. She drove my mother crazy, but she worried about everything. So she was in a constant state of anxiety all the time. Then there are people, maybe they hate their jobs and they're in a constant state of frustration, or they're in a miserable relationship. Those things are just as damaging as the big things, and you have to learn to identify those. If we were in the class, we would take time here and we would work on trying to identify some of those things. So I do highly recommend that you stop and think about this after this class and write down the things that you know that are draining your energy on a regular day. So what, again, HeartMath has done, they've created some techniques that can help us begin to stop the energy drain and build resilience. They've tried to keep them really short and sweet because I know if you're stressed out, you're not going to be able to say, oh, now what were those 10 steps I needed to do to help self-regulate this stress? So really, really simple. The first one is heart-focused breathing, and it's a very powerful and very effective tool for self-regulation. So when you find yourself feeling depleting emotions, this is a really good thing to do that works very quickly. It's a first step to shifting to a more coherent state, which is where we need to be. We're going to look more at that in just a minute. And it helps you to be alert and calm at the same time. And this is something, of course, all first responders have to learn to do. They have to remain calm, but they have to be very on top of everything and very alert. I've seen it in the hospitals, when, the coding goes off, and I know it happened to my mother, and they all ran in there, and we were all freaking out, and they were so calm, and they went in there and did what they had to do. But anyway, it also can help you stay kind of centered and focused in challenging situations, so you're not just like totally losing it, like, I don't know what to do, and not really worth any good to anybody. So here it is, and I want you to do it with me now. It's called heart-focused breathing. So the very first thing you do is focus your attention in the area of the heart. And y'all, this is really different because I do the calm meditations every morning and every night. And I know in meditation, there's a lot of focus just on the breath, and then recognizing when your thoughts, start wandering to bring them back. And, also mindfulness about identifying how you feel. But the focus here is not really on the breath, you're breathing, but the focus is in the area of your heart, because this is where all this activity is going to happen that we'll read about in a minute. It's going to help you get coherent. So let's do it together. Focus your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or the chest area, and breathing just a little slower and deeper than usual. So the suggestion is to inhale for about 5 to 6 seconds and to exhale for about 5 to 6 seconds. And a minute of this is really good. For those of you who have Apple Watches, you get dinged constantly where it says to breathe. And if you tap on that, they're going to take you through 1 minute of this kind of deep breathing. So that's a great thing to do when that happens with your Apple Watch. Just the only thing you would need to do different is to focus on your heart. So heart-focused breathing, and it's just breathing and focusing in the area of your heart, slowing down your breath. So in order to understand how to create more capacity for resilience, we have to learn a couple of terms, and one of them that's really important is coherence. So again, either through chat or if you want to unmute and answer, what does coherence mean to y'all? Nobody's answering.
You can type in the chat if you want to respond, and I'll read it out loud.
Well, most of the time when we think of coherence, we think of a coherent sentence or a coherent speech. So something that comes together and flows smoothly. In HeartMath, when HeartMath talks about coherence, they're talking about an optimal state where the heart and the mind and the emotions are aligned and in sync with each other. Now, many of us may not have stopped to think about how many times that our heart and our mind are not saying the same thing, they're not speaking the same language. You know, I think, again, a lot of it goes back to core values. When we deviate from our core values, which is easy to do. You know, if you're tired, if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you drank too much, you know, there are a million reasons that we make little deviations from that. And then a lot of times, just like I talked about with the girl that wrote the article about Kamala, and then did I tell y'all this story? Maybe I just imagined I told you because I've thought about it so many times. But if I did, I'm going to tell you again. This morning in the news, I read that I think it was a New York Times reporter was forced to write an article about Kamala Harris that wasn't true. And she really struggled and didn't want to do it, but she ended up doing it. And then she just couldn't live with herself, and she ended up quitting and I guess calling the paper out on it. And we see this a lot of times at work where we're told to do things that we don't necessarily agree with, that wouldn't be the way that we did it. And, you know, I think the people that struggle with this most are probably the whistleblowers, and think about what they go through when you're seeing things that shouldn't be happening and finally make a decision to do something about it. But the other thing is, a lot of times, you know, we're listening to those voices in the back of our head, maybe a parent or a sibling or a teacher or a bully that told you were a loser, that you were never going to do anything in life, that you were a chicken and a coward or whatever. And you're trying to make something happen, but your heart's saying, I can do this, and your mind's got that little voice in the back going, no, you can't. Everybody always told you couldn't do that. So coherence is getting the heart and the mind and emotions in sync with each other. From a physiological point of view, it's when your immune system, your hormone system, and your nervous system are all aligned with each other. And this picture that they have here is for any of y'all that know anything about rowing, and I don't, but I do know that in order to be as fast as you can, these rowers all have to be synchronized, and the little coxswain in the front, that's his job, is to try to keep them synchronized. So they're going to operate at their highest level of performance whenever they're the most synchronized, and that's what your body does too. When your immune system and your hormone system and your nervous system is all aligned with each other, then that's when you have the chance to have the greatest health. And also when your mind and your heart are synced together, that's whenever you're going to be able to manage your emotions the best and think clearest and be most creative and perform, you know, from a functional point of view best. So in order to continue to talk about coherence, we have to look at a couple of different physiological systems, and one is the autonomic nervous system. And I think most all of us have always heard of this. We know about it. We probably learned about it in school. We got the sympathetic part that is about, it's like putting on the gas, everything speeds up. And this is your fight, flight, or freeze area, the sympathetic nervous system. When it's engaged, that's what happens to you. The parasympathetic nervous system is like putting the brake on, everything calms down. And this is when we would think about, you know, getting centered and breathing and feeling harmony in our system, and just being in a calm, relaxed state. Now, both of those systems communicate with the brain. We have this heart-brain communication going on all the time. And one of the things that they've known since about the 1800s is that the heart sends a lot more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. And that's because the heart has its own complex nervous system, and they actually refer to it as a heart brain. There's a lot of area of neurocardiology. And we know that signals from the heart especially affect the brain in areas of problem solving and creativity. In terms of reaction time, it's one of the reasons that athletes work a lot with this. They want to get in the zone and get their reaction time as possible. And our ability to self-regulate has a lot to do with that communication going on between the heart and the brain. The autonomic nervous system, both of those channels go from the heart to the brain. They speak whatever's happening with that autonomic nervous system affects the heart, and the heart talks to the brain about it. So one of the biggest concepts that we have to learn is about heart rate variability. Now, I think there's been a lot more conversation about this in the last several years than there was for a long time. And for the longest time, most of us thought that heartbeats were very consistent. And what they have learned and what heart rate variability is about, and heart rate is not heart rate, is how many times a minute your heart beats. That's not the same thing as heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is looking at the actual time that elapses between heartbeats. So this is an echocardiogram. It's got 4 heartbeats on it. And you can see that between the first heartbeat and the second heartbeat, 0.859 seconds elapsed. Between the second and the third heartbeat, it only took 0.793 seconds. And between the third and the fourth heartbeat, it dropped to 0.726. So that's not the same variable or the same interval between each heartbeat. So if we look at 24 seconds of an EKG, about 20 heartbeats, we see that a pattern begins to emerge from these heartbeats and the heart rate. And so if you plot the heart rate and the heartbeat, and then you start drawing a line between those plots, a pattern begins to emerge that from your heart's creating this pattern. And on the up slope is generally when the heart rate's going up, and on the down slope is generally when the heart rate's going down. So in this next picture, we think about this pattern in the heart. We see that how the emotions affect our heart rhythms. So this is a heart rate pattern of one person. And in the top picture, you can see that it almost looks like an earthquake going off. And that's how stress feels to most of us in our body. And in the bottom, we see what a nice, smooth, calm, just to look at that wave, to me, calms me down. It feels like waves of emotion when you kind of just get mesmerized, with their consistency and their soothing pattern. So does anybody have any idea what this person may have been told to think about, what emotion they asked her to bring up inside of her to create this heart rate pattern? When you say depleting,
See, I think that's what yours looked like before the presentation started, when you were messing with that.
You got it. That is exactly like I had my little heart rate monitor on. That's exactly what you were saying. But she was asked to think about a situation that frustrated her. They wanted her to bring the emotion of frustration into her heart. And when she did, this heart rate pattern came up. So what you have is a lot of disconnect between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So you have it's like trying to put the brake and drive with the brake and the gas pedal on at the same time, or going back and forth. And what you would have is a very jerky ride. You would have poor performance of your vehicle. It would get worn out a lot quicker. You wouldn't have very good gas mileage. So the same thing happens with your body when you're getting in this kind of consistent, incoherent state. It puts a lot of wear and tear on you. You don't perform at the level that you should. It affects your health, your performance, and your relationships. Again, this is where you would probably most likely get in a fight with somebody, get angry and stay angry, like the chart we saw earlier. So in the second one, they asked her to shift her emotions and to think about something she was really grateful for and appreciative of. And after just a few minutes of that, she was able to change her heart rhythm to this coherent heart rhythm. and look again how smooth and even and harmonious and how it just flows. And if you meditate and think about getting centered, I think about a lot with yoga, go to your heart and get centered, that this is what you would probably see whenever you access positive emotions or renewing emotions. So what we know again is that these emotions, travel through the autonomic nervous system up to the brain, and it truly affects our ability to think clearly, to problem solve, to come up with solutions, to have a coherent conversation if you're communicating with somebody, especially about a touchy subject. So what we know, and if you look over here, you see that the incoherent pattern inhibits your brain function, and the coherent pattern actually facilitates the brain function. This is when you're going to speak the most coherently. If you have a presentation, you're going to do the best job possible. If you're in a conversation with somebody, communicating with them, you're going to be able to manage your emotions and have a good positive communication with them. So coherence versus incoherence is really critical to trying to be resilient. So they have created the second tool. This is actually the third one if we were in the class. This would be the second tool, and it's called quick coherence technique. And this is just a two-step process. It starts with the heart focused breathing. And what you're going to do, obviously, is try to generate renewing emotions. And all of these would be emotions that renew you. The one that's the easiest to do is appreciation and gratitude. And I think we all know that, we've heard it said a million times before, and it's true no matter how bad something is, you can generally always find something positive. So what we're trying to do is generate a feeling of appreciation or love for someone, or maybe, honor and pride. You were got an award for something and you're standing in front of 10,000 people and they're all clapping for you as you go across the stage, or you made a speech and you get a standing ovation, anything that generates a positive feeling. So very simple again, 2 steps. First one is heart focused breathing. Focus your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of the heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Again, 5 to 6 seconds, just nice and slow in, nice and slow out. And then the second step is to make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. So, this could be a person, it could be a pet, it could be a special place that you love to go that makes you feel really calm. Like I talked about a while ago, it could be an accomplishment that always brings you a lot of pride and joy to focus and think back on. Or you could just focus on a feeling of calm and ease. If you know there's something that makes you feel really calm, you can do that. Now, I will tell you, when I was first experimenting around and on the inner balance, that we used the biofeedback unit that they've created to show when you're in coherence and when you're not. I've experimented around with it a lot of times, and there's 2 things I will tell you about that's important here. One is you can't just think the experience in your head. You can't make it just a thought. You have to really try to pull your senses in and really feel it, and you will get into coherence a lot quicker. So you're actually reliving that moment or that time, or you're in that place. I know for me, I've tried with people before. Most relationships, you have really positive situations and you have really negative situations. And I know I tried to focus on my kids one time, and that was a disaster, because when I thought of them as little beautiful babies, I immediately went to thinking about them when they were teenagers, and gave me such a hassle. So now, I have a place that I just love that brings me tremendous joy and peace. And I think about that generally whenever I do the quick coherence technique. So we can find ways to, the 2 quick steps: heart focused breathing and activate a positive, renewing feeling. And what HeartMath has done is they've created technology to show in real time what your physiology is doing in response to your emotions. And so there's a way that you can put on your computer and you can see this. And what I love down here is see this area down there where the blue triangle is. That shows when you're in the zone, when you're absolutely operating at your peak performance level. It shows you, it looks at low coherence, which is shown in red, medium coherence, which is shown in blue, and high coherence, which is shown in green. So it's showing you all the time when you're going back and forth between red, blue, and green, and you will generally. And you can look and see how in this picture, the person started out in a fairly incoherent state. They went into quick coherence, and you see how their heart pattern changed so quickly. So what they have is called an inner balance. I was going to hold it up and try to demonstrate. Can y'all see if I do this? Can you see this, Mary?
So Mary, if we can, I can see you because I can see your screen still. If people are still seeing you on the screen, they have their computer set up that way. So if
okay.
anybody,
well, if you don't, I'll just talk through it.
And also at the end, at the end, Mary, you can stop sharing if you want to show it.
Okay.
Just so you know, there's about it's 12:48. I don't know if you're
okay. Well, anyway, this is not unreasonably priced. I think it's about $130, and if you buy it through the county through us, we have a discount because of us being associated with HeartMath. So I think you can get it for around $109. But this connects to your ear and it gives you the reading. You can see at the top the wave. It shows what's happening. It shows when you're in red, blue, and green. That piece in the center is like a mandala that helps you with your breathing. It's kind of like on your Apple Watch, if you have one, where that mandala comes up and you kind of breathe along with it. They just created a Bluetooth version of it so that you don't have to plug it in. You download an app free from your phone, and then you connect to this. And you can.
I have one of those.
Yeah, and of course, what happens is, HeartMath wants you can't have that on you all the time, so you have to learn what it feels like to get into a coherent state. So you begin to know from the feel of your body. But this gives you the opportunity to practice. And here's what you have to do, y'all, to build that resiliency. You have to practice. It's just like, meditation, mindfulness, just like working out. It just doesn't happen overnight. You can't just think about it or know about it. You've got to practice it. So you have to practice this heart-focused breathing and this quick coherence technique. Even if you don't have one of these units, you will know when your body's in a calmer place and when you're feeling stressed out. So if you worked with one of these machines, they would tell you if you do it 3 times a week and get 300 points that you're going to build your resilience, your capacity for resilience. So here's how you build and sustain resilience.
Mary, let me interrupt for just a minute because Kay had a question that I think it's just good to say right now because it did look like it was only for iDevices. So it's not just for Apple devices because I have an Android phone and I have one of these inner balances too. So
she was asking if it goes either way. Yes, yeah. The Bluetooth version is for Apple or Android. Anything else there now? Okay. So these are the 3 strategies for building and sustaining resilience in order to help you self-regulate your emotions on a more regular basis. So we're back to the definition of resilience. Prep, just again, like we prep for hurricanes to set the tone of the day and be more composed for upcoming stressful events. So you start the day off doing some heart-focused breathing and quick coherence and getting yourself and trying to get yourself into a calm, balanced, coherent place. Same thing as you would do with mindfulness or meditation. You know stuff's going to come up during the day, so you're trying to get yourself in a centered place so that you're able to handle it better when it happens. It's going to happen. When it does, you shift and reset. So maybe you had a bad phone conversation with your significant other or your child on the phone at work, and you need to get back and focus on your job. Go to the bathroom. While you're walking to the bathroom, you got to breathe. Do your heart-focused breathing. That's a great place to do it. I do it there a lot. In fact, it's a good thing just to use that time because you're going to practice several times during the day, and even a minute will help. And then try to sustain your resilience through the day by practicing on a regular basis, just like you're encouraged to practice meditation or mindfulness, or go to the gym so that you can increase your aerobic capacity and your strength. You need to go home at night. It might be a good time to do this on the way when you're driving home. It's a great time to practice it while you're making that transfer from work to home so that you can be focused on your family. So again, those three steps: prep in the beginning of the day, shift and reset as stuff happens during the day, and then practice it, on top of that in the evening or anytime during the day when you can. Now, I don't have time to go through this, but you can actually establish a new baseline where you actually increase your resiliency quite a bit from practicing it, so that it gets easier and easier and easier for you to self-regulate. And then the strategies for building resilience is to plug the leaks. We talked about this earlier, and you've got to identify what's causing you to leak energy, what pushes your buttons really quickly. For some, it's traffic. Some people just can't stand to have to be in traffic. That might be an energy leak. Maybe a person that you work with really bugs you, maybe your boss. I mean, there are so many things we need to identify, big and small, and think about where we're losing energy, and then how we can plug those leaks, build the resilience capacity, and think about how to plug those leaks. So like I said, I know this is fast. I know it's a lot of information, but I would like to now to take the last few minutes. We have, 6 minutes, and answer any questions anybody has. I'm going to go stop sharing. So now, can you see if I was to hold the thing up?
All right, so Mary, now everybody, I see their names up. If you're not able to unmute yourself and you just want to type in a question for Mary, you can do that, because I'm monitoring the chat, or Mary, you may be able to see the chat now easily enough. But otherwise, you can just unmute yourself and ask Mary a question.
Well, I see some interesting things. Jana says it was the ability to bounce back and keep going. And Max, the ability to resume normal life after a high stress event. Absolutely. Jana agreed. Stressful day drains are much more than a physical day. And Kate, is it for Apple only? And, I want to say I was very lucky to sit in on some training for our EMS group the other day, and the girl that did it did a wonderful job. And she used some terminology that I really liked, and she called what I would call this capacity to build resiliency. She referred to it as kind of like a readiness buffer. And that's exactly what it is. It's trying to have you be prepared as you best can for those things that are coming up. And one way, there are a lot of ways we talk about mental health right now. In the workplace, we obviously can't address mental illness, but we can talk about ways to improve your mental health, and eating right and exercising and getting enough sleep are all really, really critical. And even more so, learning to self-regulate. And when you do these things that make you healthier mentally and emotionally, you are more prepared. That's why I love that expression she used, a readiness buffer. That's what we're trying to create, is to give ourselves, build some skills that will help us, so when those things do happen, we bounce back quicker and we can get over, whether it's a divorce or a death or whatever, it's not going to go on forever. We're going to know that life goes on, and we'll be able to self-regulate and help us get us through those times even more. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all for being so patient with us. Getting on here, and Mary Waller, thank you very much. Definitely, Paula, need to go do something for her. What?
Mary, thank you so much. I just want to add to, the research that's behind all this and the technology is just really, really good. A lot of times people think, oh yeah, I'm breathing in my heart. That sounds kind of woo-woo, but it has so much research behind it. And if you want to show, Mary, your phone to everybody, if you want to, I don't know if you want to show the inner balance thing. I also have mine. I went and grabbed it. But if you sit and watch it and you do the breathing and you can see the screen and how it works, and it's an app that you put on your phone, and it's very interactive, and you get points if you're in Coherence for a while, and it's something that you can practice every day so that you can get into it quicker.
Yeah, and we have Maria Folsom on the call, and she's got certified with HeartMath. She's a victim advocate with the Sheriff's Office, and she's got, have you had a chance to work with it out there at all, Maria?
I've just started working with my coworkers, and I have an appointment set up with a survivor, 11-year-old, that I'm going to work with as well. It's a full technique and resource. I highly recommend it. It's something that everybody can do and everybody should do. It just takes practice. And the research that I learned is if you do it every day, several times a day, the average is about 6 weeks. And what happens, you form a new brain pattern that will then become your new way of handling things. And that's where that resilience and the capacity comes into play because of your practice on it. So I highly recommend it. If you haven't done it with Mary, sign up for it.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to start a class around mid-June for 5 or 6 weeks. It'll be through Zoom. But I have units here that, you know, our Leon County folks can check out anyway. I don't know. I saw a lot of Leon County folks. I don't know if we ended up having a lot of city folks. Mary, if you get a chance to write down the names, I'd like to know who was on it. I see some of them, but I hadn't had a chance to write it down so that I can record that for us anyway. Like I said, it's a lot of science. It's definitely evidence-based. Like I said, there's lots of paper, lots of research out there. If you go to heartmath.org, you'll see all the research, and you know, they've done it with prisoners, they've done it with students. They actually have shown that test scores can go up by 15 points if the kids learn how to get coherent before a test. And think about it, you know, you'll hear people say she doesn't test well. Well, that means you get so stressed out. Remember, we talked about that cortical inhibition. You can't think clearly. And it's just like me right before this happened. I'm like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to do this. And you're like, woo! So you can't think. Anyway, it's very, very evidence-based in all of the areas. And again, I agree with Maria and Mary, you need to practice. It's fun to learn, and it's fun to know that you can improve your emotional agility and your emotional flexibility and your ability to self-regulate. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kanisha. Appreciate that. All right, we got one more next week. It's about learning how to run. If you've never been a runner and you want to learn how to start, or if you're already a runner and you want to learn to compete, or if you run 5Ks, but you'd like to run a half a marathon or a marathon, we've got 3 people that are all runners that have a lot of experience. They're going to be talking about it. That will be the last of the 12-week Working Well series. We appreciate all of those of you who have participated. All of our presentations are recorded on the Working Well website. If you need the address, a link to it, just shoot me an email at barleym@leoncountyfl.gov, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Or Mary, can you type it in? It's workingwelltoday.org. I think it's /community-initiatives /. Anyway, she'll put it up there for you. Thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate your participation. Bye-bye.